In April, I traveled to Tanzania, where I had the honor of meeting Subeda. Subeda is a 10-year-old. She's living with her grandmother, Asisa, in downtown Dar es Salaam. Subeda loves spending time with her grandmother. She loves playing with her friends, but most of all, she loves going to school. And Subeda is a very smart girl, and on the day she has enough energy, she's an active student with her hand raised constantly in the air to answer all her teacher's questions. Unfortunately, though, Subeda has to stay home from school too often. On days where her family does not have anything to eat, her grandmother keeps Subeda home from school because her grandmother is afraid the little girl will be an easy prey for men who will sexually assault her in exchange for food. I learned a lot from spending time with Subeda and Asisa. And one of the most important lessons is this: malnutrition is not only a health issue, it also dictates what opportunities, education, and future girls like Subeda will have. And malnutrition, however, is everywhere. 1 in 3 people in the world suffer from it. 1 in 3. And on one side, people are suffering from undernutrition, not getting enough food and the right kinds of food to lead a healthy and productive life. On the other side, people are eating too much and the wrong kinds of food. This burdens health budgets, families, and individuals. These two sides does not describe, however, the difference between rich and poor countries anymore. Rather, we see a combination of undernutrition and overweight and obesity occurring within the same countries, within the same household, and even in the same individuals. So almost every country in the world is affected by this double burden of nutrition. Children are either too short or too thin for their age. Women have anemia. Too many of us have diabetes or a cardiovascular disease. And almost 2 billion people are overweight or obese. And it's easy to talk about all these big numbers that we see behind me here, but it's more important to talk about the staggering impact of malnutrition on people and communities. Because malnutrition steals futures, like in Subeda's case. A girl is twice as likely to own her own business if she's well-nourished. She will spend more years in school, and in turn, she will have healthier children. Malnutrition also impedes development. Countries see losses up to 16% in GDP annually as a result of stunting alone. Lower educational achievements inhibits social mobility, and reduced physical capacity leads to lower productivity. Malnutrition burdens families. When one person in an American household is obese, the household faces annual healthcare cost equivalent to 8% of their annual income. In China, a diagnosis of diabetes results in an annual 16.3% loss of income for those with the disease. But the challenges also represent huge opportunities for human and economic gains if they are tackled and reduced. So, if we don't like the journey we're on now, how do we change our destination? What we want to see is mothers getting the right nutrition during pregnancy and being able to give the right nutrition to their children. We want to see fewer empty calories loaded with salt and sugar in people's diets. And we want to see leaders at every level investing in nutrition and championing a sustainable food system, which makes it easier to eat nutritious food. The Global Nutrition Report, launched here at this session today, challenges us to tackle these questions. And I will soon be joined by 3 eminent panelists to discuss these challenges and opportunities. And, as our kind moderator said, what I'd like you to leave with after this session is an understanding of nutrition and why it's so important. Please welcome the Honourable Juliana Lasangi on stage. She's a Member of Parliament in Malawi and known for her relentless efforts to end malnutrition in her country. Peggy Liu is the chair of the joint China-US collaboration on clean energy, JUICE. Not only is she a champion of the environment, making China greener and more livable, she's also fighting malnutrition by promoting a new way for young Chinese children to eat. And last but not least, Professor Corinna Hawkes is the director of the Centre of Food Policy at City University London and a co-chair of the independent expert group of the Global Nutrition Report. She's one of the leading experts in her field and has worked internationally for over 15 years promoting better nutrition. First off, we're fortunate to be amongst the first to get the brief insights from the 2016 Global Nutrition Report. Professor Hawkes, the floor is yours.
Thank you to Your Royal Highness. It's a true pleasure to be here today launching the 2016 edition of the Global Nutrition Report. Thank you for all being here today. The Global Nutrition Report is an independent report that is designed to hold the world accountable for doing better for addressing malnutrition in all its forms. So that means that we want to celebrate success, we want to show progress, but if I can be honest with you, we also aim to make the world feel uncomfortable when we show it's not doing enough. And the first way we do that is to ask ourselves, are countries doing well enough in attaining the targets that they have set for themselves through the World Health Assembly to reduce malnutrition, the targets that you see before you? And the answer is, there is some good news. There is some green on this picture. There are a significant number of countries on track to achieve their targets for certain forms of malnutrition. But there's too much red in this picture. There is too much red in this picture to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal target of ending malnutrition in all its forms by 2030. In fact, if we go on as we are going on now, we won't even achieve these 2025 targets until the next century. And that's even though we know perfectly well that addressing nutrition, as we show in new analysis in this year's report, will help it achieve at least 12 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as has been discussed widely at this EAT Forum already. The fact is that basic good nutrition is fundamental for all other forms of development. And yet, we are faced with statistics like these, which we present in this year's report. Statistics that show that just 62% of countries, 62% of countries are doing nothing to implement 3 really quite basic policies to promote healthy eating. That only 36% of countries have fully or mainly implemented the International Code on the Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes. That not a single company has a target for increasing the amount of vegetables in their products. And that if we are going to address seriously and significantly 4 key targets for undernutrition, there is a 70 billion funding gap over the next 10 years. And I have to say that this next statistics makes me feel really ashamed. It really makes me want to weep that we are failing our under-twos. In a sample of 50 low and middle-income countries that we looked at, only 15% of the children in those countries are receiving what we define as a minimally acceptable diet. That is simply not acceptable. And it is especially not acceptable because we know that we can be successful, because we have countries and cities and regions that have shown the way, as exemplified here. We know some of these ingredients for success. And moreover, we know the number one ingredient for success, which is commitment, which is the theme of the 2016 Global Nutrition Report, commitment. As this slide shows from the example of businesses, when businesses make clear, definitive commitments to addressing nutrition, they are more likely to put into place a greater number of actions to deliver towards that goal. But at a political level, whether at any level, whether it's international, at the city level, all the cities that we have here today, at the national level, we see that when leaders step up and make a political choice, that stuff gets done. Stuff gets done. Nutrition is a political issue, and we have to treat it as one. And those countries that have made that political choice, they are, having made the commitment, they are fighting the fight they need to fight, because there will be battles. They're thinking those thoughts that they need to think, and they're taking the actions that they need to take. And we can make that choice. We can make the choice to address malnutrition in all its forms, or we can make the choice not to. And in the Global Nutrition Report today, we are asking you all to make the right choice and to make a smart commitment to ending malnutrition in all its forms, to change the development pathway of our world and indeed all of our children. Thank you.
Oh, bravo. Well, thank you, Corinna, for your presentation. I'm very happy to have all three of you here. And what I like about this panel, apart from the fact that it's an all-female one, is that we have representatives from two countries here that also represent a little bit of the both faces of nutrition. Malawi, which is tackling the challenge of undernutrition, while China has gone from undernutrition in one generation to now tackling issues of overweight and obesity. And I would like to ask you, Corinna, how can we prevent other countries from going in the direction that China has gone? And how can we prevent that? How can we as the international community prevent that?
Sure, well, I mean, it's not really rocket science. Basically, countries and governments and all actors need to be investing in actions that can have benefits for the different types of malnutrition that they experience in their locality. So in the past, what's happened is that there's been a belief among governments and also among funding agencies, I should say, that the only way to tackle malnutrition is to focus on one thing, because we need to prioritize, let's get one thing done right. And as a result, we have success on stunting. So we can learn from that success. But now what we need is to move on from that and have a single-minded focus on making sure that whatever action we put into place to address the particular form of malnutrition, that it has co-benefits, or at least does no harm to other forms of malnutrition. So it's that more holistic thinking, that more integrated approach to malnutrition, which we need to communicate and encourage those decision makers to be thinking about when they're implementing policies and plans.
When we were preparing for this panel, I'd like to come in. We've been hearing a lot of talk about the SDGs, or the global goals, as I like to call them, to make them a bit more understandable for regular people who are not in this business. We've been talking a lot about this, and can you give a very short overview on how nutrition ties into the global goals?
Yes, the Sustainable Development Goal Target 2.2, to use very technical language, is ending malnutrition in all its forms. But the analysis that we present in the report, and indeed there's been similar analysis around food presented here, shows that in 12 of those goals, that if you address malnutrition, that the indicators of those goals are relevant to nutrition. In other words, when you look across development, there's addressing some aspect of nutrition will also help that aspect of development. So I think one of the critical roles for the global community is how they're going to implement those global goals and cross-cut between them to achieve these goals by actually taking actions in other sectors. We know very strongly from the evidence that you won't address malnutrition, obesity, underweight, unless you take actions in lots of sectors. So we need to have those global goals implemented in a very cross-sectoral manner.
Peggy, I find your story so interesting, and I would like you to tell us a little bit about China. It's gone from a dramatic improvement in living standards for so many people, and how has that affected nutrition in China?
So I think the story of China is so fascinating because its history is very interesting, recent history. It really just opened up in the 1980s. In fact, the first supermarket only appeared in 1990. And by 2011, it had more supermarkets than any other country in the world. So actually, in one generation, it's gone from famine to gluttony. And I'll take you through how it's done that. This is really a culture where we drink water and we drink a lot of tea. But in one generation, in fact, the time that I've lived in Shanghai for the last 12 years, I've seen a lot more of coffee shops at every single corner. And this has brought a lot of milk and dairy and yogurt, which we've been told is good for our children's growth. And we've had a lot more sweetened this is called bubble tea. I think a lot of you might be interested in trying it, but it's very, very sugary. So we've gone from water and tea to sugary drinks. We've gone from meat as condiments to companies or restaurants bringing in huge slabs of steak, just like in the US. Right? This is for 2,000 RMB per steak, very, very expensive. We've gone from eating fruit traditionally as dessert to sweet pastries. Right? We have changed our habits so dramatically in just one generation. So what's happened? Well, unfortunately, our children have gone quadrupled in terms of obesity. 20% of children under 17 are overweight or obese. Right? We have the dubious honor of being the fattest country as of last year. We have a fifth of the world's population, but a third of the world's diabetics. And they estimate that 15% of children are pre-diabetic. And that may be up to 70% of people are undiagnosed diabetics. So we are very scared that diabetes alone will bankrupt China's healthcare system. So
tell me, that change, having gone so quickly, you say in your experience only in the last 15 years it's gone so quickly. Has people's knowledge kept up with this incredible pace? So average people in China, do they care about this issue of overweight and obesity and what kind of foods to eat, what is the right kind of foods to eat? Or are still people more...
How do we deal with this? Yes, in such a large country. Well, I think the biggest lesson to learn from China and other developing nations is that just by going from famine to gluttony doesn't mean that we go from malnutrition to healthy people.
No.
Right? And so the issue is that China has been led on this very westernization of the diet as we've urbanized. And people now don't even know how their food is grown. So what JUICE, my organization, has decided to do since 2013 is move from energy and teaching mayors how to build cities and lighting to focus solely on food and diets, to teach kids and parents in China how to shift their diets, because it is the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. So we do very simple things using games to engage kids and their parents on things like, where does your food grow? Right now, if you're a kid in China and you fall down, your nanny will pick you up and just brush the dirt off of your hands. You won't even know what a seed looks like or where this most famous, most popular cold appetizer dish grows, the wood ear fungus. I eat this almost every single time I go out. Well, it grows on a trunk of a tree, but most people don't know that. So I think that the only way we can change diets at societal scale, and when I say societal, I mean 1.3 billion people, I mean 94 million primary school children. We target the K through third graders, so that's about 33 million children in one country alone. We have to play games with them and ask them, how many sugar cubes do you think are in these popular drinks? If you get it wrong, you get to take a card and maybe you have to do 5 push-ups or 10 jumping jacks. But then you also learn how to make infused flavored waters, right? So we try to give alternatives. In China, there's very interesting, I think, 2 phenomena that we can leverage. One is, I'm going to say something a little bit bad of the Chinese culture, but we're a little bit like lemmings, right? So in early days, everybody had Louis Vuitton bags, right? Because that was the thing to do. Milk, in one generation, everybody drank milk. I think we can do the same thing, changing the social norms towards healthy eating very easily, because parents want safe food. They want healthy diets so that children can study better. And all of our cards are bilingual, and they want their kids to learn English to triple their salary potential. There's also another interesting phenomena, which isn't just applicable to China, but primetime TV, I think, is the single best way to change social norms. So we're in the discussions with, for example, Super Nanny, which was imported into China as a format. It's in its 4th season, has 30 million viewers on Wednesdays, and a huge social media platform to play these games with their kids, with their parents, and change social norms very quickly.
Thank you. So, Juliana, what has been your approach? You live in Malawi, where you have a completely different burden of nutrition. And tell us about your journey and your fight for putting this on the agenda in the political landscape in Malawi.
Okay, thanks very much, Royal Highness. I've been in politics for 2 years now. May was in 2 years. And one of the things that struck me, not only in nutrition, is when we launch reports like this, my mind goes back to say, in her statement, she says 62% of the population, we're not going to achieve the goals. So I'm saying, where is the 62%? I represent a rural community. In my constituency is really rural. So when we launch these reports, I come to think, what is happening to a household so that they can get the information that we are getting here. And this is the gap that we usually have as policymakers, as planners, and even as implementers. We are launching this report here in Kenya, everywhere. It's in a hotel. When do we get this report at household level, where the data is coming from? So my approach is to say, how do I get this information to the person so that we are not part of the data that she has presented today? And this I found to be very critical. That's why in my role, when I was elected, one of the things I've continuously done is to go back to the roots, to the basics, to the community where the majority of the people are, who are malnourished, because they are the ones who need this information. This nutrition, it's about behavior change. How do we do our farming? And as a policymaker, I've also seen the gap in the way we are implementing our programs. 2 years in a row right now in Malawi, we have had bad years of harvest because of El Nino and everything. It was predicted, we knew about it. The most we did was to send a red eye that we are in an emergency, give us the food. You all ran and you gave us the food. What is happening to the household? So my approach is to work with the people at household level, so that they understand that they can take charge of their lives and do something. So the thing that I've focused on, because I come from an area where there's a lake, we want to promote technology. We are still using a hoe as a country. We're not getting much. So why don't we do into mechanization technology so that we can make sure that we put the women or the men in groups so that they are able to cultivate a lot using the machinery. And for whatever they cultivate, the results, Some they can use for their household, some they can use to sell. And because they are well grouped as cooperatives, we can easily create markets so that it can come back to them. So these are the issues that have been focused on. And the other issue that I've looked at when we talk about nutrition, we all think about crops. We are forgetting the animal husbandry component, which is very easy. And in this era of climate change, most of the animals, they are resilient to the climate changes that we have now. And this can bring a lot of food and a lot of nutrients at the household level. And the secret about nutrition, when people are healthy, there's so much that they can do. You can look at the cost at household level. The diseases, you hardly see the diseases at the house. And most people think that the politicians, they don't equate nutrition to votes. No, it's not like that. You need healthy people who can participate in politics, who can run after you to make sure that they show you all the morale that you need as a politician in my context. So you need healthy people. When people have food, they are happy to please. So it's also a political tool that you can play around with in the context that we are living in.
I'm glad you're saying that, because from what I've understood from Corinna, political leadership is one of the most important aspects of this. But I wanted to ask you also a question, because this sounds quite depressing, this report. But what has happened in the countries where it really works? What have they done, and what can the rest of us learn from what they've done?
Sure, yeah. I mean, some of the examples I showed earlier, Brazil is often cited, Peru is an example, Kenya is another example, and there are a range of examples of success. Thailand is another. And what unites these, as I said, is the aspects of political leadership. But what comes with that is what those political leaders do with that commitment. So that means translating it into an infrastructure in which it can be delivered. And that often means engaging with their populations, mobilizing society, bringing people in. And that requires a certain type of infrastructure. That's not just going around talking to people as you might do at the local level, but having institutions and infrastructures that can bring people in for discussion. So in other words, you have the political will, but then you have to push it out there, and that requires people. But the second aspect which unites all of these countries is having clear targets, clear financing, and a whole range of different actions in different sectors which can deliver. We see that in Brazil, for example. It's a kind of classic example of that. And we highlight Brazil in this year's report. And it's a very interesting example of Ghana. Ghana has done a lot on women's health, for example, which is reducing infection rates, which again is contributing to improved nutrition. But there is a third aspect which I see in my analysis of these countries, which is an ability to reflect and learn. When you're committed to something, you're able to hold a mirror to yourself. You're able to put an action, to take a risk maybe, but to put an action into place, and then to ask yourself, is it really doing well enough? Rather than saying, box ticked, done, I've ticked the box, I've told somebody I've done it. No, you say, is this action actually working to achieve what I want it to achieve? And if it isn't, we fix it, we add to it, we change it. So it's that ability to reflect and learn which leads to a steady accumulation of more effective actions, which really you can see that when you go and look very closely at these different countries. So we should be proud of sometimes failing a bit, as long as we learn from it. And we should be proud of reflecting and learning rather than just thinking it's about bang, 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 bang action. We need the ability to stand back and reflect and learn.
Peggy, very briefly, as a sustainability expert, what would you say the word stands to gain from preventing malnutrition?
Well, you know, one of the reasons why JUICE as an organization, as an environmental organization, is now focused completely on food and teaching children is because we realize that it's a third of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. I think there's many other things that are affected by trying to produce food more effectively. For example, food waste Tristram Stewart, who's here in the audience, says that in the UK, 10% of the emissions alone come from food waste. In China, we launched 2 years ago something called the Empty Plate Campaign. So the government officials have to try and clear their plates and order less banquets. The new dietary guidelines that were just launched in May, I wrote a HuffPo article that launched yesterday about these new dietary guidelines. It actually talks about reducing food waste. Things like deforestation. When we eat less meat, then we will have less land deforestation, but loss of grain is also an issue. I heard of a great program run by the WFP in Uganda, where they have invented these steel vats that sort of ignites the oxygen within the grain vats and reduces the number of bugs eating the grain, so reduces the grain loss. There's cities, for example. We talked a lot about that during this session, but China is the country that is building the most number of cities over a 40-year period of time. So there's a lot that we can learn about how to distribute food more effectively to reduce food waste, to reduce malnutrition, but also reduce the energy, the water, the land use that is tied to food production. So
Thank you. Juliana, I'd like to, last question to you would be, what do you need? What do you see a country like Malawi, what does it need from the international community?
To me, when it comes to the issues of food security, unfortunately, we see more response when we are in a crisis. And I know some people, they think crisis you can do well. But my issue is, let's think about ways of sustainability. So they're investing in the technology. We have a lake like in Malawi. It's amazing that we go hungry with the lake that we have in Malawi. So the investment should be in the technology so that we move away from subsistence farming into improving our technology, coming up with the dams, and even creating the market so that we can do all these things. And secondly to this, from the international community, our investments in education is really critical because people are able to understand cause and effect, the whole issue of population, people are able to understand these things. And when you are doing technology, we have an opportunity to work with the young people, taking opportunity of the demographic dividends to say how best do we talk to the young people so that we diversify. And the multi-sectoral approach to nutrition is only one thing. And finally, one of the things I wanted to talk about when it comes to nutrition, and I said it at one forum, we really need to make a lot of noise about nutrition. It's not like in reproductive health where some issues are controversial. Nutrition, everybody needs food, but our noise is so low that other people really overpower us. And we think the highest problem is maternal death. Yes, it's death, but what about nutrition? So let's continue with the noise. Let's make the noise. Our message is very simple and palatable to all. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think we'll leave that as the last call to action in this room. Make a lot of noise about nutrition. Thank you all so much.
Great way to end the panel. Thank you.